Okay, everybody, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. I have a cool little follow-up for you guys from the brand MONBREY. Now, we've definitely followed them since their very first release, which was absolutely very King Seiko inspired, and now they've moved into more of a Grand Seiko space, and I can't really argue with it. Now, a little bit about the brand. They were founded by two Hong Kong-based industrial designers, Henry and Austin, with 18 plus years of watch design and development experience. They just decided to create their own unique brand, and they definitely do skew towards more of that everyday dress watch genre. Some key characteristics in design, like when you're looking for something within this space. Of course, you're going to find clean, classic, minimalist designs and watches that are sensibly sized, which this definitely hits all of those marks. And then they even throw in quite a fair bit of ornate details for good measure. Now, this is their MB2 series, the Kenkyū, and this is the T3 Fumé brown dial. Now, the Kenkyū era is basically when the first shogunate was founded in Japan, taking inspiration from artistry of samurai weaponry and armor, and named this collection after this memorable era in samurai history. These, of course, are also complemented by the serene charm of a jewel steel dial, as seen here, as well as options with engraved mother of pearl, which are also quite impressive. Now, these go for $659 because this is the production follow-up. I originally did a little pre-production preview, and I was definitely impressed, but I will say I'm glad to finally get the production unit in hand and on wrist to share with you guys, because they have made several improvements that I can really appreciate. Of course, it is overall more refined in its execution, but some of you will also notice that the end link has been refined, and this was one of my things that I mentioned in the review, so cool to see them take that feedback and run with it. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, now, obviously quite handsomely designed, but let's also talk about this sweet spot of sizing. 37.5 millimeters in diameter, 12 millimeters thick, and that is including that box dome sapphire, which does sit proud of the case. But you can see beautifully compartmentalized in terms of how thin that mid case visually renders, as well as those nice sweeping angles on the downturn of the lugs. Although they are, angled and not super rounded or organic, it kind of goes with the style here. So there's a lot of beautiful reflective points. Very nice, very complex, especially when you consider the price point at just $659. Now, also, you're going to have a lug of just 45 millimeters. So that is very, very manageable, very maintainable for a lot of different wrists. So for those of you that could be worried that this watch might be a little large, you have smaller wrists, this is definitely quite nice on multiple wrists. And I don't think it's undersized on my larger wrist either, but we'll get to that. Now, in terms of construction, 316L stainless steel, brushed and polished finishes, as you guys can see all the way around. Great transitions. Let me give the some of those bevels a quick little wipe here off camera so you guys can really enjoy the nice sharp transitions. Now, this is sharp to the eye, not sharp to the touch. So very, very nice. I mean, I think aesthetically, it's hard to ask for anything more. I think this is absolutely gorgeous. Of course, I think they could do some more dial options. They do have, these are very cool. I think it'd be nice to see, maybe some basic sunray options or lacquer dial options, just because this case, bracelet, the combination, I mean, for me anyway, there's a lot to like, and I don't think they need to take any more time redesigning new cases or bracelets. I think they could absolutely just offer you a couple different other options in terms of dial and handset, and you would have something really, really compelling regardless. Now, getting into that boxed sapphire there, as you can see, the edge on there isn't as rounded as your traditional box sapphire. I'd say it's almost like a chamfer itself, but beautifully rendering here. You can see no milky outer ring, so nice clarity there, even at harsh angle, even at the outer reaches of that crystal. So very, very nice in terms of functional clarity, as well as aesthetically quite handsome. Now you're going to have a an anti-reflective coating on the underside and an anti-fingerprint coating on the top side. So I think that's pretty cool, and that's something that not a lot of folks ask for, but you tell me it's there, and guess what? I'm gonna be able to appreciate it, because yes, I do find myself staring at watches and for taking pictures of watches. So stuff like that is fun for me. It definitely helps. And I think this colorway with the Fumé brown is also quite versatile, especially with that copper seconds hand there. That really is the signature for this line. Now, getting into the crown, screw down crown, beautifully signed, not just engraved. You can see that there. There's more details to that. So very, very cool in that kind of embossed styling. Nice knurling on the grip there. Not too large, not too small. I think it's a fine sweet spot for a watch of this size. Now, the case back is going to be very svelte, and there's a reason. It's because this does promote some anti-magnetic protection up to 4800 AM. So very cool. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see the movement, but it's going to give you another level of flatness in terms of the way that it wears. The movement inside is going to be the automatic Miyota 9039, which is a no date movement, which means there's going to be no ghost position on the crown settings. You're going to have a 42-hour power reserve with a 4 hertz sweep or a 28,800 vibration per hour beat rate. And then it also has been regulated to plus or minus 8 seconds per day, which again, quite competitive at this price point. And I know regulation isn't for everyone. There's a huge market of people that love mechanical watches for mechanical watches, and they are not crazy about enforcing regulation. And they say, hey, well, if I wanted a more accurate watch, I would just get a quartz watch, or I would just look at my phone ultimately. I get that. And if you don't value the regulation, that's fine. But I will say there's definitely a lot of folks that are out there, especially in my comment sections of my videos, that are asking for regulation, especially at higher price points. So at under 1,000, well under 1,000 really, to get a nice level of regulation, I think is really special. Now, this jewel steel dial is obviously the star of the show. Now, of course, the setting is gorgeous when you think about this case profile, all of the angular facets, the brushed, the polished, just the level of complexity that they attempted and nailed at this level is very, very impressive. But what's going to draw you into this dial is the dial. And it has this kind of pyrite-like texture, which I really, really like. And, it's multifaceted, in terms of the way it's going to hit the light. And then, of course, you have these applied indices that are also multifaceted and multi-finished. And the same goes for the handset. Look at these pieces here. Just the micro texturing that's done so that it will capture light in fun and unique ways without relying on the lume. For me, is very special. And again, little details like the capped seconds hand. It gives you just a level of refinement that, again, it's one thing to capture the look, right? It's another thing to capture the build, the feel. And I think that's where MONBREY really, really excel above other brands in similar price points, that they didn't just get the look of something that's timeless, that is quite attractive, but also some of these luxury trappings that you're finding on this watch, again, they're very impressive, especially at the price points. In terms of the lume, I believe most of their units do have BGW9 grade A, and this one, because of the more custardy, warm lume there, is probably going to be old radium. I don't see that, at least not currently on their site, but that's what I would assume. And I assume they're using a high grade as well, because they're using the high grade for the BGW9 on their other colorways. Now, in terms of the water resistance, 10 atmospheres or 100 meters. And like I mentioned, screw down crown. So very nice, very confidence inspiring, because you're going to know that your crown isn't going to pop out at any given time while you're submerged. You have 20 millimeter lugs, and look at that end link, guys. Beautifully integrated. Now, I'm not to somebody who thinks that every end link should make it look like an integrated end link. I don't mind bracelets like Jubilee bracelets where, you think about Rolex, and it's a very clear delineation from the end links, from the horns here on the lugs to the end link. And I like that. And, I have a lot of Seikos that are very, very similar where the end link breaks the design from the visual flow of the case. And again, I actually like that. But I will say something like this hits a nice little sweet spot. It doesn't seem like it's one big block, right? Because there are some different angles that are being used. But it's like, see, there's that little drop, which I can appreciate. It does help break the visual flow so you can create movement visually, and I like that. But at the same time, it does have a very nice uniform look to where it doesn't break the flow, right? It breaks away, but it's not jarring. So I like that it's a balanced approach. I like that it's a female end link there, so it's not creating any additional length, especially for a watch with this really impressive lug to lug that you're going to want to be able to utilize. For those of you with smaller wrists, you're going to want to be able to get that smaller lug to lug measurement, and I think they do a great job with that. Now, this bracelet is gorgeous. It tapers down to 16 millimeters at this milled push button clasp, featuring 5 positions of toolless micro adjustment. Guys, this is what we want in watches, and I like that when it's all the way extended. No issues with the visuals there. It doesn't look like an afterthought. Don't get me wrong, this is quite a ubiquitous toolless micro adjusting clasp at this point, but it does the job, and it looks quite nice. It's clean. It could be thinner, sure, but I think proportionally it looks great, and it's also, of course, going to help balance the watch on your wrist. Now, one of the nice things about MONBREY is, although they do have this beautiful bracelet, and I'm a bracelet guy, they also do come with a strap option. Check out this pebble-toned Epsom leather here. Very, very cool. And then you do have fantastic finishing on the hardware, which of course fits beautifully with that case. So great angles, great facets there, brushed, polished, signed, fully milled, even the finger. So you're getting everything quite nice. You're going to have one floating keeper, one fixed. You're going to get quick release spring bars on the strap and the bracelet, so you don't need a tool, although I'm sure most of you already have tools at home. You won't need them, so if you give this as a gift to somebody, maybe you love Grand Seiko and you bought yourself one, but then you have a buddy who really enjoys the look but honestly is not a watch person. Like, this is such a great gift, whether it be, again, to a buddy, your son, or even at this size, it could be quite unisex in terms of the way that it can be worn for a smaller female wrist as well. So with all that said, let's actually get it on my wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, this wears really quite handsomely. Yes, 7.5-inch wrist. And then you're probably thinking, some of you are like, wow, that wears really well. It does. Of course, my wrist is a bit tall and round, so it's actually smaller. I would say from the top down profile, then it's just not super wide, flat, and accommodating. And some people with maybe a 7-inch wrist might have a wrist that visually is going to look wider. So just remember, we're in 3 dimensions, people. But of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're going to notice quite a bit of perspective distortion. All of a sudden, it doesn't look quite as well balanced or well sized. It's looking a lot larger all of a sudden, right? You're seeing more of the watch case, the head, versus the bracelet sides, versus when I just move it right here. Hey, now it's just, you're getting more of the sides of the bracelet. You're getting the middle is more centered. And that is, again, perspective distortion based on the camera lens itself. So what I'll do is keep my wrist nice and low and then just tighten up the frame here so that you guys can get still a detailed look, but just add a bit of a true aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And check it out. Very, very handsome. Some of you might be thinking it's a little small. I don't think it is, especially not in wristwatch check form. Just as a floating wrist, I think this looks beautiful, perfectly sized. Maybe in terms of when we have the context of a full human body. I'm not a short or thin person. I'm a pretty big guy. And I will say that, I would probably prefer to wear this with a long sleeve shirt. And because I think that's where it would look better. It would look better more as a really sporty dress watch versus, a sports watch dedicated. Although with that screw down crown and 100 meters of water resistance, you absolutely could do that. But yeah, for me, preference wise, I would like probably a larger diver, or a slightly larger, everyday piece, or something like that. But I think that this, again, it's in that level of refinement and that size where it's going to make me want to wear the watch. The fact that it is a hair smaller at just 37.5 millimeters versus I do prefer more of the 39, 38.5 when it comes to this design of watch. But you guys can see, look at the way it sits on the wrist beautifully there. Not a lot of gappage. Very nice. I mean, the angles, the light play, this really, really, again, look at that dial, the angles on it, the depth. It is very cool. And that is not a design. That is not something that's painted or printed on. That is actual texture. And it's impressive. And I mean, then you think about so that's very non-traditional. But then you think about all the traditional goodies when you look at this dial, when you look at the dial furniture, right? You think about those indices, the handset. It all comes together in a way, and you're getting a lot of mixture of old and new, which I can appreciate. So with that said, let's get it off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Alrighty, check it out. Not too shabby at all. Of course, it's again, an everyday dressy watch. So no, it's not going to be a diver. No, it's not going to be a field watch, pilot's watch. It's not a tool watch. Although it is quite robust in terms of its build and water resistance, to include magnetic resistance as well. This definitely wants to be on the more refined side, and it does a great job. Ooh, look at that dial. Here's the low light transition, guys. I always like to work that in because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it is nice to see these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting, guys. And again, the level of depth on this dial is quite immaculate. Look at that. Some of you might find it too busy. Wow. I think this has a beautiful signature aesthetic to it, and I could easily see it becoming somebody's signature timepiece. This might just be that one that encapsulates all of your own personal values in terms of what you like in a wristwatch. And I think this one, again, is just the business. It is handsome. Wow. I can't, no notes, MONBREY, no notes. I did have some notes, of course, on the end links. I don't think I was the only one, so I can't take all the credit. And I'm honestly semi-sure that MONBREY themselves were quite aware with those original pre-production prototypes, and we're happy to eventually switch over here. But man, this thing is gorgeous. Ooh, the light play. Might want to just keep this one in the dark a little bit longer. And again, it's not because of the Lume, right? The Lume isn't anything especially impressive, but it's everything else. Look at that. The flat links, the flat brushing, the deep glossy bevels. And then when you look at the dial itself, the level of play, whether it be those indices, those hands, that little second hand stack cap there. Oof. It all just comes together, that angled, but not, maybe a little understated, yet not underappreciated, that angled chapter ring there on the outer reaches that just kind of compose everything and add a little bit of a break and a calmness to that dial as it flows now into this very angular and complex case. So very, very handsome, guys. I think aesthetically, if you like this watch, wow, you're going to love what you get in terms of the build quality. So closing thoughts, guys, on the wrist, nice compact wear that doesn't feel too undersized, with a well dialed in level of proportions that feel as balanced as they look, right? On the wrist, it feels great. To the eye, it looks great. In terms of model variants, do check the site links for current options and availability. Definitely check out those engraved mop dials. Mother of pearl is, you know, what mop is short for, in case you don't know. Those look very, very cool too. For me, I lean towards these just because they were just that much more unique. Yeah, I think maybe even a bit more versatile, but maybe not quite the level of pop as those mother of pearl options, which again, depending on if you're giving this as a gift or whether it's for yourself or for a friend, spouse, significant other, whatever it might be, you do have quite a few options, but they are a micro brand, so click quickly because they can be selling out of items depending on, you know, where they are in their current run, depending on when you're watching this video. In terms of comparable models, guys, clear Grand Seiko vibes, which makes sense considering how much Grand Seiko as a brand have just helped create buzz around robust and stylish everyday dress watches. So again, it makes sense that you would want to compare this to something like a Grand Seiko. You're still going to get that nice, smooth 4 hertz sweep, which is great. You're getting a no date. You're getting that beautiful profile. You're getting a lot of complexity, but not in a way that's loud. I can appreciate that. It's a quiet, more restrained level of complexity. Hey, they went out there and they swung for the fences, and I think they hit a real home run. So for me, guys, bottom line, this brand has just gone from they take this, and it's another example of going from a promising prototype to this even further elevated production form, and from a brand that, have a clear vision and the resources to execute it at a very high level. So that's impressive. And I want to keep seeing MONBREY to deliver because I'm a fan of what they're doing as a watch enthusiast, as a, as a consumer, and as, of course, a YouTube personality out here doing reviews. This is the type of stuff that gets me excited. And that's really all I can say about that. But let me know what you guys have to say down in the comments. I know there are other brands that are out there that are trying to do similar things, but for me, MONBREY really just nail it. From a brand perspective, I like that, again, it's a full service branding exercise. It's not just coming out with a cool watch. Hey, we wanted to make a cool watch. We made a cool watch. Okay, what's next? We'll try to think of another cool watch. There's, where it's a little bit more strung together. I feel like here with MONBREY, there is something to the strategy. There's something to that feeling of completeness, that this is coming from a brand with a vision. And when you have a brand with a vision, whatever is executed is going to be aligned with that vision, which is going to help you with consistency when you're shopping for watches online versus just, you can't go to the mall and pick up a MONBREY and take a look at it and feel it. So I think it is reassuring that, hey, once for those of you that enjoyed the MB1, you already know this MB2 is going to be good. And you know that whatever's coming next, MB3 is going to be good too. So as long as you like the aesthetic, you're going to appreciate the build. So, all right, guys, let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please hit like. And if you're not already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.